It's a long afternoon, huh? A packed afternoon. Is that okay? Yeah? Alright, so welcome to part 2.
Jadi baiklah, selamat datang ke bagian yang kedua.
So we are going to take it from where we left.
Jadi kita akan lanjutkan dari mana tadi kita sempat terputus.
So we're transitioning into Daniel chapter 9, which is going to be the third prophetic vision.
Dan kita akan melanjutkan ke Daniel pasal 9 yang adalah penglihatan nubuatan yang ketiga.
And then we'll spend most of the session in the last vision, which is Daniel 10, 11, and 12.
Oke, dan kita akan habiskan bagian terakhirnya di penglihatan yang terakhir, yaitu Daniel 10, 11, 12.
Alright, so let us have a word of prayer.
Oke, mari kita berdoa.
Our Father in heaven, thank you Lord for this opportunity to study once again.
Bapa Surgawi, terima kasih Tuhan atas kesempatan untuk belajar sekali lagi.
Lord, we pray that you may speak to our hearts.
Tuhan, kami berdoa agar Engkau boleh berbicara kepada hati kami.
That you may help us to understand the times we live in and how to be ready for Christ's coming.
Engkau boleh mempersiapkan kami di mana kami boleh bersiap untuk kedatangan Kristus.
In Jesus' name.
Dalam nama Yesus.
Amen.
Amin.
Alright, so let us recap.
Oke, mari kita ini ulang kembali.
So Daniel chapter 8
Di dalam Daniel pasal 8
finished with Daniel wondering about a part of the prophet or of a vision that he didn't understand.
Jadi ini berakhir dengan bagian dari penglihatan yang Daniel tidak pahami.
What was that part that he didn't understand?
Bagian yang mana yang dia tidak pahami?
2,300 days.
Ya, 2300 hari.
Right? So then we saw that in beginning of chapter 9,
Dan kita lihat di bagian awal daripada pasal yang ke-9,
Daniel he's in the time of Middle Persia and he's studying the book of prophet Jeremiah.
dan Daniel ada di dalam zaman kerajaan Persia dan dia sedang mempelajari kitab Yeremia.
And he understands from this prophecy that after the 70 years that were already passed, Babylon should be gone, and it was, and the Israelites should have gone already back to Israel.
Dan dia memahami dari nubuatan 17 tahun itu bahwa Babylon akan berlalu dan sudah berlalu dan bangsa Israel akan kembali ke Yerusalem.
So the first part happened, but the second part did not yet happen.
Jadi bagian yang pertama sudah terjadi tetapi yang kedua belum terjadi.
They were still there in Middle Persia.
Karena mereka masih di sana di Medi Persia.
So then he has this vision about the 2,300 days.
Dan dia dapati ini penglihatan mengenai 2300 petang dan pagi.
So we can imagine that he might have wondered, is God still punishing us further for our iniquities?
Dan mungkin kita bisa bayangkan bahwa dia mungkin bertanya-tanya apakah Allah masih akan terus lanjut menghukum mereka atas kesalahan-kesalahan mereka.
Alright, so this is the setting for Daniel then to pray and to fast, as we have here in Daniel chapter 9.
Dan ini adalah ya latar belakang daripada mengapa Daniel itu berdoa dan berpuasa.
Yeah, that's basically if you read through chapter 9, that's the focus of his prayer is forgiveness on his behalf, for him and for his people.
Dan kalau saudara lanjutkan baca di dalam pasal yang ke-9 ini, dia berdoa mengenai apa? Meminta permohonan ampun atas dosanya dan juga atas nama bangsanya.
And for God to restore his people back to Jerusalem.
Dan supaya Allah boleh mengembalikan umatnya ke Yerusalem.
Now let us go and see something in verse 20.
Dan mari kita lihat
Chapter 9 and verse 20.
sesuatu di ayat yang ke-10, pasal 9 ayat 10.
It says that while I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God.
Which verse?
I read verse 20.
20. Oh. Oke, ayat yang ke-20. Oke, sementara aku berbicara dan berdoa dan mengaku dosaku dan dosa bangsaku, bangsa Israel, dan menyampaikan ke hadapan Tuhan Allahku permohonanku bagi gunung kudus Allahku.
So yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening of oblation.
Sementara aku berbicara dalam doa, terbanglah dengan cepat ke arahku Gabriel, dia yang telah kulihat dalam penglihatan yang dahulu itu pada waktu persembahan korban petang hari.
So there's a powerful concept here.
Jadi ada suatu konsep yang luar biasa di sini.
When we pray in confession, asking for God's forgiveness,
Jadi ketika kita berdoa di dalam pengakuan dan memohon pengampunan dari Allah,
when we break our heart before Him, asking His will to be done,
dan ketika kita menyerahkan hati kita kepada Allah dan memohon agar kehendaknya boleh dapat terjadi,
even while we are praying,
bahkan ketika kita sementara sedang berdoa,
God sends His agents.
Allah mengirimkan agensi-agensinya.
And that's what happens when you are praying.
Dan itulah yang terjadi ketika kita berdoa.
And not even that,
Dan bukan itu saja,
it says that He sent the man Gabriel
di sini dikatakan bahwa dia mengirim Gabriel
to fly swiftly.
untuk terbang dengan cepat.
Now, let us just use our imagination here a little bit to picture this.
Jadi coba kita gunakan imajinasi kita untuk membayangkan hal ini.
So if we would try to locate Gabriel,
Jadi ketika kita mencoba untuk menentukan kira-kira Gabriel ini lokasinya sedang di mana,
if he would have a physical location,
kalau dia punya lokasi fisiknya,
it says you read from Luke chapter 1 verse 19 that Gabriel stands in the presence of God.
kalau di dalam Lukas 1 ayat 19 dikatakan bahwa Gabriel itu berdiri di hadirat Allah.
So let's imagine while in this vast huge universe,
Jadi kita bisa bayangkan bahwa di dalam alam semesta yang begitu luas ini,
the throne of God must be somewhere very distant from here.
bahwa tahta Allah itu pasti ada di tempat yang begitu jauh dari sini.
That even the light will take millions of years to travel.
Dan bahkan mungkin cahaya pun membutuhkan jutaan tahun untuk melaluinya.
But says that while he's praying,
Tapi di sini dikatakan bahwa sementara ia sedang berdoa,
he flies swiftly,
Gabriel terbang datang dengan cepat,
faster than speed of light.
lebih cepat dari kecepatan cahaya.
That's how the heavenly agencies move to assist to our prayers.
Jadi demikianlah betapa cepatnya agensi-agensi surgawi akan datang untuk menolong kita.
Now verse 22 says, and he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am come forth to give you skill and understanding.
Ayat 22, lalu ia mengajari aku dan berbicara dengan aku, Daniel, sekarang aku datang untuk memberi akal budi kepadamu untuk mengerti.
At the beginning of your supplications, the commandment came forth, and I come to show you, for you are greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision.
Jadi ketika engkau mulai menyampaikan permohonan, keluarlah satu firman, maka aku datang untuk memberitahukannya kepadamu sebab engkau sangat dikasihi. Jadi camkanlah firman itu dan perhatikanlah penglihatan itu.
So we see that God has given the commandment to Gabriel to come to Daniel at what time?
Jadi kita bisa lihat bahwa Allah sudah memberikan perintah kepada Gabriel untuk datang ke Daniel kapan? Waktu kapan?
At the beginning of his supplication. Do you see it there?
Pada awal mula daripada ketika ia mulai menyampaikan permohonan.
So I mean, it's a powerful thing. Can you imagine if the Lord already knows what we are going to pray, right?
Jadi bayangkan bahwa ya Tuhan sudah tahu apa yang akan kita doakan ya.
But when we predisposition ourselves to open our heart before God in confession and pleading for His will to be done.
Dan ketika kita sedang membuka hati kita dan menyerahkan hati kita di dalam pengakuan dosa dan memohon agar kehendaknya boleh dapat terjadi.
Even when we are beginning our prayer.
Bahkan ketika kita baru memulai.
Lord says to Gabriel, go.
Allah katakan kepada Gabriel, pergi.
So, and it's amazing to see that he comes to him and says, you are greatly beloved.
Dan yang luar biasa adalah bahwa ia datang kepada Daniel dan untuk mengatakan bahwa engkau sangat dikasihi.
And can you imagine, this is not like a family member or a friend saying that you are greatly beloved.
Dan bayangkan bahwa ini bukanlah ya mungkin ya keluarga atau ya teman yang katakan bahwa engkau sangat dikasihi.
This is heaven saying, you are greatly beloved.
Ini adalah surga sendiri yang mengatakan bahwa engkau sangat dikasihi.
Wouldn't you like to be called that way?
Ya, bukankah maukah kita dipanggil sedemikian?
You are greatly beloved.
Engkau sangat dikasihi.
So it says, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision.
Dia katakan, jadi camkanlah firman itu dan perhatikanlah penglihatan itu.
So the question is, what matter, what vision?
Jadi pertanyaannya adalah firman apa dan penglihatan apa?
What is it that was shown to him that he did not understand before?
Jadi apakah yang ditunjukkan kepada Daniel yang dia tidak pahami sebelumnya?
The 2,200 mornings and evenings.
Ya, 2.300 pagi dan petang.
Okay, so whatever we are going to read after is connected with that.
Jadi apapun yang akan kita baca berikutnya ya terhubung dengan itu.
Alright, very good. So that's now we are introduced then to the third prophecy here.
Jadi kita diperkenalkan kepada nubuatan yang ketiga di sini.
It says 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city.
Katakan 70 kali 7 masa telah ditetapkan atas bangsamu dan atas kotamu yang kudus.
Okay, so 70 weeks, if we do the calculation, 70 times 7, it's 490 days.
Jadi kalau kita kalkulasikan 70 minggu, 70 kali 7, 490.
So this is the period of time that is allocated for Israel, time of probation.
Jadi di sini adalah waktu yang diberikan kepada bangsa Israel, yaitu masa percobaan.
Okay, so now we need to see where does this period of time begin.
Ya, kita harus tahu di mana, kapankah periode waktu ini dimulai.
So the text goes on and says
Maka ayatnya berlanjut dan berkata
that it's actually from the time of the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem. That's from verse 25.
dan di sini dikatakan bahwa dari saat firman itu keluar, yakni bahwa Yerusalem akan dipulihkan dan dibangunkan kembali.
So this is an event that actually is recorded in Ezra chapter 7 and verse 7.
Dan ini adalah suatu kejadian yang juga dicatat di dalam kitab Ezra 7 ayat yang ke-7.
Yeah, when King Artaxerxes gave the royal decree for the people of God who wanted to go back to Jerusalem to rebuild the city.
Jadi ini adalah suatu dekret yang diberikan ketika Raja Artasasta memberikan perintah bagi orang Israel untuk kembali dan membangun kembali kotanya.
So for that, historians say that it was in 457 BC.
Dan untuk kejadian itu, para ahli sejarah mengatakan bahwa itu terjadi di dalam 457 SM.
Okay, so and then he says, from that time until the Messiah, the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. In other words, 69 weeks.
Dan dikatakan bahwa di sini dikatakan sampai kedatangan seorang yang diurapi, seorang raja, ada 7 kali 7 masa dan 62 kali 7 masa lamanya. Dengan kata lain ada 69 minggu.
So the best way I would recommend is that you do this at home with a pen and a paper. You write these things so that you can visualize and it helps to stick.
Jadi ya caranya yang paling baik ya kalau saya bilang ya nanti mungkin di rumah ya dengan pensil atau dengan pulpen dengan kertas ya dituliskan supaya bisa dibayangkan, digambarkan.
Basically says from the time of this decree to rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah there is going to be 69 weeks. That's what it means, 7 weeks and 62. So 7 plus 62.
Jadi ya inilah waktunya adalah bahwa dari ketika dekret ini diberikan sampai Mesias ya ada 69 minggu.
So what happens is that at that time it was the time when Christ was baptized actually.
Dan apa yang terjadi adalah waktu itu adalah ketika Yesus dibaptis ya sebenarnya ya. 69 minggu.
You know that nowadays one of the modern books of the modern Jewish is called the Talmud.
Jadi saudara tahu bahwa di sekarang ini salah satu buku keagamaan modern dari orang Yahudi yang disebut sebagai Talmud.
Actually, they say that it is a curse to the people who study Daniel. They have a curse. It should something that people should not care or read.
Jadi dikatakan bahwa adalah sebuah kutuk bagi orang-orang yang mempelajari kitab Daniel. Jadi buku ini bukanlah sesuatu yang perlu dibaca, dipelajari.
And we understand why, because of the prophecy of Daniel, we can find exactly the day of when the Messiah, the year when the Messiah was going to be baptized, which proves that Christ is the anointed one that this is talking about.
Jadi ya, kenapa ya? Karena melalui nubuatan yang ada di kitab Daniel, khususnya nubuatan 70 minggu ini, kita bisa sampai kepada tahun di mana Yesus dibaptis, yang menunjukkan bahwa Yesuslah memang sang yang diurapi itu.
Alright, so doing the same calculation, 69, so that was the 62 plus 7. You get these years and you reach the year 27 AD. That's when Christ was baptized.
Jadi kalau kita kalkulasikan waktunya, kita sampai 69 minggu ditambahkan ke 457 SM sampai ke 27 Masehi.
So there is still 1 week left.
Jadi masih ada 1 minggu yang tersisa.
Okay. So and for that week we say after the 62 weeks. So that was the 62 is part of the 69. That is the confusing part of the because of the language. But it says that after those 62, the Messiah should be cut off.
Dan di sini katakan sesudah ke-62 kali 7 masa itu akan disingkirkan seorang yang telah diurapi.
And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. So that's the week that is remaining.
Raja itu akan membuat perjanjian itu menjadi berat bagi banyak orang.
Okay, so that is what you have here in the screen. This is what Daniel, in other language, he said 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So that makes 69. And now you have 1 week still left.
Jadi di dalam ya dikatakan ulang, jadi ada 7 minggu, 9 minggu, lalu masih tersisa 1 minggu lagi.
Alright, so and then he says that in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering.
Jadi dikatakan bahwa pada pertengahan 7 masa itu ia akan menghentikan korban sembelihan dan korban santapan.
So that means in the middle of those 7 years, which will be 3.5,
jadi
he will be crucified.
Jadi di akhir daripada 7 hari itu, yaitu 33,5 hari, dia akan disalibkan.
Now I need to stop here because I know this can be confusing. Is there any question?
Jadi saya perlu berhenti di sini karena saya rasa ini mungkin bisa membingungkan. Apakah ada pertanyaan?
Please go ahead. I don't mind repeating or trying to say it otherwise.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
In verse 26, it says that, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So it's not after 69 weeks, but it's after 62 weeks.
Because it's connected with the way you have the language used before. So in verse 25, for some reason, maybe linguistic or something, he says 7 weeks and 62 weeks.
Yeah. But in verse 26, it omits the 7 weeks. It only says the 62 weeks. So how do we, I don't know, explain this to someone who is a bit more critical than us Adventists who just yes, no question.
No, that's true. I mean, the thing is that the order of the way it's described is 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So it's like the 62 weeks are after these 7 weeks.
Okay, I see.
Okay, yes, brother.
Yeah.
Is there any meaning of this writing 6 weeks, 62 weeks? Why not simply 69?
69, yeah. I personally don't know. I personally don't know. I have not looked into that, but it's true. It's true.
Okay.
It's true. It will make it easier if it was written that way, right? Yeah.
Is there anything that is actually happening only after 7 weeks in the 69 weeks? Is there like events that happens?
There might be a reason for that. Yeah.
Is that what?
I personally don't know from top of my head. No.
Okay.
Okay? I see your faces. Yeah, I see your faces. So digest this. Okay.
Oke, kita cerna ini dulu ya.
This is something that it's honestly at home with pen and paper it's easier.
Jadi ya mungkin kalau di rumah ya sejujurnya lebih mudah kalau di rumah nanti pakai pensil dan kertas ditulis sendiri.
But I mean this again as we were hearing a moment ago, this should not be just information or calculation or wow I can find these things out.
Jadi memang ya seperti yang kita baru dengar sebelumnya saja bahwa ini jangan hanya sebagai informasi, oh ya saya bisa hitung-hitung, saya bisa kalkulasi, jangan hanya sebatas itu saja.
There are two things. One thing is that we can believe that Christ is who he was foretold to be.
Jadi kita ada dua hal. Yang pertama adalah bahwa kita bisa percaya bahwa Kristus adalah memang siapa yang dia sudah dinubuatkan.
He's the real Messiah. He's the real sacrifice that was offered for our ransom for our sins.
Dia adalah Mesias yang sejati yang memang sudah diberikan sebagai tebusan untuk dosa-dosa kita.
And the second thing is that it should also reinforce our faith in this book.
Dan yang kedua adalah yaitu harusnya menguatkan, memperkuat iman kita di kitab Alkitab ini.
Because as we look ahead at what God's people have to face in the future,
karena ketika kita melihat ke depan terhadap apa yang harus dihadapi oleh umat Allah di masa depan,
we can be sure that if the past happened so precisely,
kita bisa yakin bahwa jika masa lalu itu memang terjadi begitu tepatnya,
we can be sure that the future will happen just as it was foretold.
Kita juga bisa yakin bahwa masa depan pun juga akan terjadi sebagaimana sudah dikatakan.
And that is that Christ will overcome Satan in the end.
Dan itu adalah bahwa Kristus akan dapat mengalahkan setan pada akhirnya.
And those who stand with Christ will overcome and inherit the kingdom.
Dan bahwa mereka yang berdiri bersama-sama Kristus akan juga dapat mengalahkan dan memperoleh kerajaannya, mewarisi kerajaannya.
At what time are we supposed to finish?
Dan jam berapa kita harus selesai? 5:50.
5:50. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. Let's see how far we can go.
Ya, jadi kita lihat seberapa jauh kita bisa selesaikan.
That is the thing. I mean, if you remember, Christ oftentimes he said, "My time has not yet come. My time has not yet come."
Jadi kalau kita ingat, seringkali Yesus mengatakan bahwa waktuku belum tiba, waktuku belum tiba.
But at a certain point he said, "The time is fulfilled. My time has come. The hour has come."
Tetapi pada suatu ketika dia katakan, "Wah, waktuku sudah tiba saatnya." Ya.
So how would he know that?
Jadi bagaimana dia bisa mengetahuinya?
So, but he must have studied these prophecies and the Old Testament.
Ya, tentunya pastilah dia sudah mempelajari nubuatan ini dan perjanjian lama.
Alright, so at 34 AD then it's the end of these 70 weeks.
Jadi di 34 Masehi adalah akhir daripada 70 minggu ini.
So that is the time then when the probation for Israel comes to an end.
Dan ini adalah masa di mana masa percobaan bagi bangsa Israel itu selesai.
And what is interesting to see is that let's go there. Let's go to Acts chapter 7.
Dan yang menarik adalah, ya mari kita lihat dicatat di dalam Kisah pasal 7.
And let's read verse 55 and 56.
Dan kita baca ayat 55 dan 56.
Because something happened in this episode. So Stephen was about to be stoned.
Karena sesuatu terjadi pada insiden ini, karena Stefanus sementara akan dirajam.
And look at what it says there in verse 55.
Dan lihat apa yang dikatakan di dalam ayat yang ke-55.
But he, talking about Stephen, being full of the Holy Ghost, looked up steadfastly into heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing on the right hand of God. And said, "Behold, I see the heavens open, and the Son of Man standing on the right hand of God."
Tetapi Stefanus yang penuh dengan Roh Kudus menatap ke langit lalu melihat kemuliaan Allah dan Yesus berdiri di sebelah kanan Allah.
So we are going to see this a little bit more further on, but the fact that Jesus is standing is something of great significance.
Dan kita akan melihat ya nanti bahwa fakta bahwa dikatakan bahwa Yesus berdiri adalah sesuatu yang sangat signifikan.
Because throughout the New Testament, Jesus is described as being not standing but seated at the right hand of the throne of God.
Karena sepanjang perjanjian lama selalu dikatakan bahwa figur Yesus ini selalu dikatakan duduk di sebelah kanan Allah Bapa.
So the fact that he is standing means that something specific is happening.
Jadi fakta bahwa dikatakan bahwa ia berdiri berarti ada sesuatu yang secara spesifik sementara sedang terjadi.
And it's actually the same that we read in Daniel chapter 12 verse 1 that says, and at that time Michael shall stand up.
Dan ini adalah hal yang sama, kejadian yang sama yang dicatat di dalam Daniel pasal 12 di mana dikatakan pada waktu itu Mikael akan berdiri.
So this means that the probation is closing.
Ini artinya bahwa masa percobaan itu sementara sedang berakhir.
So here probation is closing for the Jews.
Jadi di sini masa percobaan berakhir bagi umat Yahudi.
And that's why Daniel chapter 9 verse 24 said 70 weeks are determined.
Dan itulah sebabnya di dalam Daniel 9 tadi dikatakan bahwa 70 kali 7 masa ditentukan bagi umatmu.
So after this, it will no longer be the geographical Israel to be considered, but spiritual Israel. Whoever is in Christ is Abraham's seed.
Karena setelah ini jadi bukan lagi ya Israel secara geografis yang dianggap, tetapi Israel rohani yang adalah benih Abraham.
Alright, so what we have here, let me just fast forward, is that these 70 weeks were a part of the 2,300 years, that prophecy and vision that he did not understand in the very beginning.
Jadi yang perlu kita sadari, pahami bahwa adalah 490 tahun ini adalah bagian daripada nubuatan 2300 hari yang dia tidak pahami tadi.
So that will bring us then from the same starting point, it will bring us all the way to 1844.
Jadi dari titik awal yang sama, 2300 tahun ini akan membawa kita kepada tahun 1844 Masehi.
And then the sanctuary shall be cleansed.
Dan bait suci itu akan dipulihkan dalam keadaan yang wajar.
So what does it mean for the sanctuary to be cleansed?
Jadi apakah artinya bagi bait suci ini untuk dipulihkan?
So again, as we spoke the first session, the sanctuary is the glue that puts all these pieces together.
Dan kembali seperti yang tadi sudah kita katakan di sesi yang sebelumnya, bahwa bait suci ini adalah lem yang akan merekatkan semuanya.
So Moses built the tabernacle after the way God had instructed him to do.
Jadi Musa itu mendirikan tabernakel sesuai dengan instruksi yang Allah sudah berikan.
Has a shadow or a model of the real sanctuary that is in heaven.
Sebagai bayangan ataupun model daripada bait suci yang ada di surga.
So if Christ is no longer on earth, if the earthly sanctuary is no longer valid,
jadi kalau bait suci yang ada di dunia ini sudah tidak lagi berlaku,
then the sanctuary that is going to be cleansed must be the sanctuary that is in heaven.
Maka bait suci yang akan dipulihkan ya bukan yang memang sudah tidak ada di bumi ini, tetapi yang ada di surga.
So and the sanctuary to be cleansed in heaven goes in parallel with the time of the judgment that we saw for Daniel chapter 7.
Dan bait suci yang akan dipulihkan di surga itu ya secara paralel itu juga ada di dalam apa yang kita lihat di sini.
So that means that from this year onward, Christ has entered into the most holy place.
Jadi di sini bisa kita ketahui bahwa sejak 1844 dan seterusnya Kristus sudah masuk ke dalam bilik yang maha suci.
And friends, I tell you, this is amazing because tomorrow, if you are here, we will see that in Revelation is exactly that.
Dan saudara-saudara, ini sangat luar biasa ya, karena kalau besok saudara juga hadir, kita akan lihat bahwa di dalam Wahyu juga sama persis seperti ini.
Christ is on earth, is offered as a sacrifice.
Yesus di bumi dipersembahkan sebagai persembahan korban.
He goes to heaven, there is the baptism of Pentecost.
Dan dia naik ke surga, itulah baptisan Pentakosta.
You remember the second article in the sanctuary?
Dan saudara ingat perabot yang kedua di bait suci?
You remember that?
Apa itu tadi? Perabot yang kedua di bait suci.
Which means that Christ is about to enter
Yang itu artinya adalah bahwa Kristus akan segera memasuki
the holy place back then.
bilik suci.
Right? And so, but if we follow the model, it means that some point in time Christ must has to enter into the most holy place.
Karena kalau kita ikuti runutannya, maka pada satu waktu Kristus harus masuk ke dalam bilik yang maha suci.
And that's we believe it's in 1844 because that's when the sanctuary will be cleansed.
Dan kita percaya bahwa itu adalah tahun 1844 yang adalah saat di mana bait suci itu akan dipulihkan.
You know what makes Adventists a bit, different from other Christian denominations?
Jadi apa yang membuat orang Advent itu berbeda daripada denominasi Kristen lainnya
is actually that we follow the model of the sanctuary to understand the ministry of Christ.
adalah bahwa kita mengikuti model bait suci ini untuk memahami pelayanan daripada Kristus.
The majority of Christianity discards the Old Testament,
Jadi mayoritas daripada orang-orang Kristen itu tidak lagi mengindahkan perjanjian lama.
and as a result, they cannot see what Christ is doing now.
Dan ya sebagai hasilnya mereka tidak dapat melihat apa sih yang sebenarnya Kristus sebentar sedang lakukan.
Like Christ died on the cross, he went to heaven, it's finished.
Jadi bahwa ya Kristus mati di kayu salib, dia naik ke surga dan setelah itu selesai.
But the sanctuary shows that we have a living Savior.
Tetapi di dalam mode bait suci ini kita diberitahu bahwa kita memiliki juru selamat yang hidup.
That he's following a predefined plan, a model that he had already before.
Bahwa ia sementara sedang mengikuti suatu rancangan yang memang sudah diatur sebelumnya yang ia ikuti.
So we can know where he is now,
Jadi kita bisa mengetahui di mana dia sekarang.
and we can know where he's going next.
Dan kita bisa mengetahui kemana dia akan pergi selanjutnya.
So that we know how to prepare for that.
Sehingga kita bisa tahu bagaimana harus bersiap untuk kejadian itu. Saudara ikuti sejauh ini ya.
Okay? Please, we are a small class here. If you have questions, if you are not understanding, feel free, raise your hand.
Nah, jadi karena ini kelasnya kecil ya, kalau ada yang miss atau ada yang nggak mengerti, langsung angkat tangan aja tanya.
Okay? So, let's move on.
Oke, kita lanjut.
Daniel 10.
Daniel pasal 10.
The beginning of the fourth and the biggest prophecy in the book of Daniel.
Oh, can I have a question before?
Yes, please. Sure.
Boleh ya? Jadi kan
Of course.
saya tahu juga toh.
Let's go.
Okay, so for all the previous fulfillment of prophecy, there is actually a event that is happening that is not done by humans. But for 1844, it seems that there's nothing that happens. Only, we say that it happens, which is like, the revival, whatever, we say that, but there's no kingdom going on. So we cannot, it seems that we are just trying to mix and match things because there's no cosmic thing that is going on, there's no astounding event.
Okay.
We just say, 1844, yeah, the Adventist people, they're getting together, that's the event. But it's not a big event.
All right. So, I mean, that we could see that the revivals and these things, as you mentioned, were like out of common. That people in the US, people in Europe, people in other parts of the world were studying these things and coming to the same conclusion that Christ is coming. Christ is coming. I think also it's remarkable the fact that right after this disappointment, there is Hiram Hudson, this man who is walking in the cornfield, and he has this vision of Christ in the most holy place. Okay?
Yeah.
So, how to say? It is probably not something that is like, like a cataclysm or a worldwide thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for example, we take the episode with Stephen, which was a vision that Stephen had,
Okay.
was recorded. We take it as like something like very significant, like a landmark in history.
Yes, but to push this point a bit further, it seems that, for other events, it seems like kingdoms fall and rise, sacrifice happen. But for this, in 1844, we say that something's going to happen. But what we're saying something that has happened is actually the wrong thing. So actually, there's nothing happening in the earth, right? Except us being wrong. So how is it that a fulfillment of prophecy?
Right.
So I'm not saying that I don't believe it, but
Sure.
for those who might say that,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm asking for a friend.
Sure. I mean, the thing is this: the only way for us to look at this is looking at the model, because it's true. It's not something that is happening like here on Earth, like at a global scale. It's something local. But if you think about Pentecost, for example, Pentecost was something remarkable in
Yeah.
the history of Christianity, right? Nevertheless, it was something that was limited to a small group of people there in Palestine, right?
Right.
It was just a few group of people who were waiting for it and prepared for it. but then after they receive power, then multiply. Okay.
Yes.
So in the same way, when we get to 1844, you have again, it's a small group of people who are studying these things, but has the supernatural evidence that they are in different places. I mean, for me, a miracle they have is that they get to these conclusions without computers, without without electricity. I mean, it's amazing. How do they get to these conclusions? So I think that makes it remarkable in terms that it's true. It's not something that it's widespread. But if you look at it, Christ came, only a few shepherds.
Yeah.
Only a few magi, right?
So you're saying it's after the fact that we see that it's a very significant thing. So it's the same with 1844. No one, but after the fact, we point it backward and say it's a big thing.
Exactly. Exactly. Because that's the thing. I mean, if you look at how Christ came, it's amazing. So he comes. The people come from foreign lands. Oh, we heard about him. He's coming. And the people who's supposed to be the people of the book, what are you talking about? No, Messiah here, no way. Shepherds come, okay? And he's not born like in a fancy place, he's born in the manger. I mean, it's amazing to think about it, right? But it's just a bunch of small, insignificant people in the eyes of society that get it, right? But out of that, multiplies, and I think that's the way God. Sorry, do you need to translate that? I'm sorry.
Okay, so to summarize, jadi pertanyaannya adalah, kalau untuk kejadian yang tahun-tahun sebelumnya kan ada sesuatu yang besar terjadi kan, luar biasa, ada kerajaan naik turun runtuh, lalu kemudian Pentakosta juga ada kayak supernatural terjadi. Tapi di 1844 kan seolah-olah sebenarnya tidak ada yang terjadi, biasa aja. Bahkan yang kita bilang Yesus Muradnya sudah datang kan, kalau dia benar datang luar biasa. Tapi ini kan enggak. Jadi sebenarnya tidak disertai sesuatu yang kayak heboh gitu loh, fenomenal. Yang fenomenal adalah kesalahan pengertiannya, malah jadi olok-olokan, bukan sesuatu yang baik sebenarnya kan. Lalu kemudian jawaban daripada Leandro-nya adalah bahwa ya memang bahkan kedatangan Yesus sendiri pun seperti itu. Cuma ketika kita melihat ke belakang, kita bilang, oh ini signifikan. Tapi pada saat itu terjadi, nggak ada yang tahu. Jadi mungkin sama juga, 1844, pas kita melihat ke belakang, oh ya ini Tuhan bekerja apa-apa. Tapi waktu itu kejadian, ya nggak ada yang tahu juga. Hanya sekelompok orang di New England, Amerika gitulah.
Yeah. And you see, there like some people.
Stephanus also.
Yes, please.
I think when Stephanus died, he's the only one who saw Jesus standing.
Okay.
Maybe Peter, Thomas, right?
They didn't see anything yet.
He didn't realize. Yeah, he didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's true.
The time for Israel.
Right, has come. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
in 1844 also like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
God give to the a few people.
Small band of believers.
That's right. That's right.
So that means when Jesus comes, nobody knows.
So that's the thing. So the first time that was the case, right?
Yeah.
The second time it will be a bit different.
So how we can we prepare ourselves?
How we can prepare? Let's go and discuss that. Yeah. No, definitely. Let's discuss that. Okay? Yes, please.
And somehow suddenly tomorrow he comes.
Mungkin lu translate itu ya?
Apa?
Ya, mungkin sama kali ya. Kadang-kadang kita kalau dengan pasangan gitu, dengan seseorang pas dia lagi hidup sama-sama biasa aja, tapi ketika dia sudah meninggal baru peristiwa itu, aduh, seandainya dulu peristiwa itu jadi besar gitu loh, ketika
Bilang bisa.
iya kan, apakah besar, kan lebih bernilai gitu. Pada saat kita bersama dia, orang yang masih hidup, kita kan biasa aja kehadiran dia. Tapi ketika sudah meninggal orangnya udah berlalu, wah ternyata itu peristiwa besar gitu. 44 itu juga mungkin pada saat orang-orang menjalaninya itu peristiwa yang biasa, tapi buat kita sekarang itu peristiwa besar tuh gitu.
Okay. So what he's saying is just like human relationship. While we're living together, things happen. We might not necessarily put emphasis or significance into it, but once the people died or once we pass like years, then we look back, then we see that is very significant. So same thing with 1844 is similar to that.
Exactly. And I mean, Oftentimes people say that how can this church be like a true church if it comes out of a disappointment or a misunderstanding, right?
It's quite.
How did Christianity begin? Same thing, right? They thought they were going to. Sorry,
Right.
go ahead.
Oh ya, jadi sama juga seperti ya. Bagaimana mungkin gereja ini dimulai dari sesuatu yang sebenarnya adalah sesuatu kekecewaan besar. Tapi sama juga ketika kekristenan pertama kali mulai juga dimulai oleh sesuatu kekecewaan. Ketika mereka berharap Mesias datang untuk melakukan sesuatu.
You know, and if we have time when we read in Revelation, if we have time during the Revelation part tomorrow.
Dan kalau kita punya waktu di bagian sesi Wahyu besok, kita akan baca.
We're going to see this chapter 10 when that we connect with the rise of Adventism.
Di dalam pasal 10 kita akan coba lihat menghubungkannya dengan kebangkitan daripada Adventism.
Of this, when John was given a book to eat that was sweet in the mouth and bitter in the belly.
Jadi ketika Yohanes diberikan suatu gulungan kitab yang manis di mulut tetapi pahit ketika dimakan.
It was a bitter experience for the great disappointment.
Nah, itu adalah suatu pengalaman yang pahit, kekecewaan besar itu.
It was a bitter experience in the beginning of the Christian church as well.
Dan itu juga ada suatu pengalaman ya kepahitan di awal kekristenan dulunya juga.
Why? Because they had a misunderstanding.
Kenapa? Karena mereka mempunyai suatu kesalahpahaman.
Okay? It doesn't mean that it's over. When they got things clear.
Jadi bukan berarti bahwa itu selesai, tapi ketika mereka akhirnya semuanya menjadi jelas,
now they knew.
Akhirnya mereka mengerti.
Alright? And I believe that the same thing that helped them there back then is the same thing that helped us and helped the Advent movement in the beginning.
Dan saya yakin bahwa apa yang menolong mereka pada waktu itu jugalah yang menolong kita sekarang dan juga tentu di awal pergerakan Advent ini.
Understanding of the sanctuary.
Yaitu adalah pemahaman mengenai bait suci.
They should have understood back then that according to the model, Christ has to die as a sacrifice.
Karena mereka harus mengerti bahwa menurut model bait suci ini bahwa ya memang harus ada korban. Yesuslah harus mati menjadi korban.
Not to be the King of Kings already in the very beginning.
Bukanlah langsung menjadi raja segala raja di awal ministrinya.
In the same way for us, we should know that according to the model.
Dan sama juga seperti kita ya, sesuai dengan modelnya.
Christ went to the holy place, he must have gone to the most holy place at some point in time.
Jadi ketika Kristus beralih ke bilik suci ya pasti nanti pada waktunya juga akan beralih ke bilik mas suci.
You know, I know sometimes these things might sound too academic or too theoretical.
Jadi saya tahu mungkin ya kadang-kadang hal ini terdengar terlalu akademis atau terlalu teoritis.
But actually it's not.
Tetapi sebenarnya enggak.
Because it's about understanding the ministry of Christ from where it begins and how it ends.
Karena ini adalah mengenai bagaimana memahami pelayanan Kristus dari kapan itu mulai sampai nanti bagaimana itu akan diselesaikan.
And I'm telling you that this is one of the pillars of Adventism.
Dan saya katakan bahwa ini adalah salah satu pilar daripada pergerakan Advent.
That is being shaken the most.
Dan salah satu pilar yang paling digoncang
From outside,
dari luar,
but also from inside.
tapi bahkan dari dalam juga.
Right? So we need to study these things to show ourselves approved.
Jadi kita harus mempelajari hal ini supaya kita dapat memberikan jawab kepada mereka yang bertanya.
Right? Any questions still on this part?
Ada lagi pertanyaan di bagian ini?
Right? So let's see how far we go.
Jadi
Okay?
kita lihat sejauh apa kita bisa lanjut.
So Daniel chapter 10, we have a description of this man clothed in white linen.
Jadi dalam Daniel 10 kita miliki satu deskripsi mengenai seorang yang berbalutkan kain lenan putih.
So we are not going to read the whole chapter.
Jadi kita tidak akan baca seluruh pasalnya.
But if we put some key verses of the description of this man clothed in linen.
Jadi kalau kita taruh deskripsi daripada orang yang berbalut kain lenan ini
In parallel with the similar descriptions in Revelation chapters 1 and 2.
dengan paralel dengan penggambaran terhadap seseorang yang ada di dalam Wahyu 1 dan 2,
We see that this man in linen is none other than Jesus Christ himself.
kita akan lihat bahwa orang yang berkain lenan ini bukanlah orang lain tapi Yesus.
Right? So, wow, we are already 11. No, we are not. Let me see something. Right. So let us see a few things here just before we pass on to Daniel 11.
Jadi mari kita lihat beberapa hal sebelum kita lanjut ke Daniel 11.
So it seems that again he's praying, Daniel,
Jadi sepertinya sekali lagi Daniel sementara berdoa,
and this time Christ appears in the vision. Then there is an angel who appears in the vision.
dan Kristus muncul dalam penglihatan, lalu kemudian ada lagi malaikat yang muncul dalam penglihatan.
And let us read from verse 12.
Dan mari kita baca mulai dari ayat yang ke-12.
He said, "Then said unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand, and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days." Again we see it's 21 days, but again we see this is written this way. "But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia."
Oke, lalu katanya kepadaku, janganlah takut Daniel, sebab telah didengarkan perkataanmu sejak hari pertama engkau berniat untuk mendapat pengertian dan untuk merendahkan dirimu di hadapan Allahmu, dan aku datang oleh karena perkataanmu itu. Pemimpin kerajaan orang Persia berdiri 21 hari lamanya menentang aku, tetapi kemudian Mikael, salah seorang dari pemimpin-pemimpin terkemuka, datang menolong aku, dan aku meninggalkan dia di sana berhadapan dengan raja-raja orang Persia.
So it seems that there is a struggle while Daniel is praying here.
Jadi sepertinya ada suatu pergumulan ya sementara Daniel sedang berdoa.
And it says that the prince of the kingdom of Persia was preventing or fighting back the angel.
Dan ini sepertinya pemimpin daripada orang Persia itu sedang menahan, mencoba melawan malaikat yang diutus untuk datang ini.
And that the struggle was such that Michael had to intervene.
Dan pergumulan itu begitu rupanya sampai Mikael sendiri harus datang dan mengintervensi.
Now the question is, can a prince of an earthly kingdom fight against an angel?
Dan pertanyaannya adalah apakah pangeran atau pemimpin dari kerajaan duniawi bisa melawan malaikat?
What do you think?
Bagaimana kira-kira?
No chance, right?
Nggak mungkin ya.
I mean, when angels appeared, when the Romans were keeping the tomb of Christ, they just fell.
Ya, ketika malaikat muncul, ketika prajurit Roma menjaga kubur Yesus, ya mereka langsung rebah.
So this must be talking about something else.
Maka ini pastilah berbicara mengenai sesuatu yang lain.
Actually, Jesus in John, he called Satan the prince of this world.
Ya, di dalam Yohanes, Yesus menyebut setan sebagai penguasa-penguasa dunia, pemimpin-pemimpin dunia.
And Michael,
dan Mikael,
he's the one who is like God.
Dia, arti kata Mikael adalah yang seperti Allah.
He's the commander-in-chief of the angels.
Dan dia adalah penghulu malaikat.
And has the authority to raise Moses from the dead.
Yang memiliki otoritas wewenang untuk membangkitkan Musa dari kematian.
And has the power to resurrect the dead at the end.
Dan juga mampu membangkitkan orang-orang mati di akhir zaman nanti.
I don't have these references here, but I can give this to you later.
Jadi saya tidak punya ayat-ayat rujukannya, tapi saya bisa kasih nanti.
But this is to show that Michael is none other than Christ.
Tetapi rujukan-rujukan ini adalah untuk menunjukkan bahwa Mikael itu tidak lain, tidak bukan adalah Yesus sendiri.
Okay, so this chapter is kind of an introduction to the vision that actually is going to have in chapter 11.
Jadi pasal ini sepertinya adalah suatu perkenalan akan penglihatan yang akan muncul di pasal 11.
Daniel chapter 11 is the longest prophecy in the book of Daniel.
Dan Daniel pasal 11 adalah nubuatan yang dicatat terpanjang di kitab Daniel.
We are not going to all the details of Daniel chapter 11.
Jadi kita tidak akan pergi membahas semua rincian daripada Daniel pasal 11.
But we are going to try to see some things that we are already familiar with.
Tapi kita akan coba lihat beberapa hal yang kita semua sudah kenal lah.
Okay, so if you open there in Daniel chapter 11.
Kalau kita buka di dalam Daniel pasal 11
and verse 1.
Ayat 1,
it says, "Also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him."
Ayat 1, seperti dahulu aku juga mendampinginya untuk menguatkannya dan menyokongnya, yakni pada tahun pertama pemerintahan Darius orang Media itu.
So which kingdom is Daniel on at this moment?
Jadi Daniel ini sedang ada di dalam kerajaan mana?
So Persia, Middle Persia.
Ya, Medo Persia ya.
Okay. So verse 2 says, "And now will I show you the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia."
Oleh sebab itu aku akan memberitahukan kepadamu hal yang benar. Sesungguhnya 3 raja lagi akan muncul di negeri Persia, dan yang keempat akan mendapat kekayaan yang lebih besar dari mereka semua. Dan apabila ia telah menjadi kuat karena kekayaannya, ia akan berusaha sekuat-kuatnya untuk melawan kerajaan Yunani.
So is this in agreement with what we have seen elsewhere in Daniel?
Jadi apakah ini sesuai dengan apa yang kita baca di Daniel?
Yeah. So we have Medo-Persia,
Jadi kita punya Medo Persia,
and then we have Greece, right?
dan ada juga Yunani ya.
And even if you see verse 4,
Dan kalau lihat di dalam ayat yang keempat,
it says that his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven.
tetapi mana nih? Tetapi kerajaannya akan pecah dan terbagi-bagi menurut keempat mata angin dari langit.
Which is the same language that we have in Daniel chapter 7 and chapter 8.
Yang adalah sebenarnya bahasa yang sama yang ada di dalam Daniel 7 ayat 6.
Alright, so now then there is a lot of history. Let me see. Yeah, I have it here. So this is the division of the Greek Empire.
Jadi kita lihat ini adalah pembagian daripada kekaisaran Yunani.
So you see this. So this is the Middle East. This is today one is Turkey. Greece today is Greece today is here. Turkey is around here now.
Jadi ya kita lihat bagian sini ini Yunaninya, ini Turkinya.
But what happens is that Greece was divided, and after the division, the north part, Seleucus, conquered this one, and all this region became the kingdom of the north.
Jadi yang terjadi adalah bahwa salah satu dari 4 bagian itu, yaitu bagiannya Seleucus, itu menaklukkan 2 bagian yang lain di utara, dan akhirnya disebut sebagai kerajaan utara.
Which, by the way, was for the most of it was coincident with the region of ancient Babylon.
Yang ya secara kebetulan wilayahnya adalah sama seperti wilayah kerajaan Babylon.
So, and
sebelumnya.
Ptolemy was then the kingdom at the south.
Dan Ptolemy adalah kerajaan selatan.
So what you have most of the first half of Daniel chapter 11 is fights between the king of the north and king of the south.
Jadi sebagian besar daripada Daniel 11 adalah pertempuran antara kerajaan utara dan kerajaan selatan.
Okay, so but if we keep the pictures of Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 8, what should we expect that would happen after Greece somewhere within this prophecy?
Jadi kalau kita tetap pertahankan gambaran yang ada di dalam Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, apa yang kita harapkan akan terjadi bagi kerajaan Greka ini di dalam nubuatannya?
Any guess? Who should appear?
Siapa yang akan muncul?
Rome should appear, right?
Ya, Roma harusnya muncul ya.
Okay, so let's see.
Mari kita lihat.
King of the north. Actually, we are even past Rome, but let's look at this. Verse 37. Chapter 11, verse 37.
Saya lihat di dalam pasal 11 ayat yang 36.
It says, "And the king," so this is the king of the north, "shall do according to his will, and shall exalt himself, and magnify himself above every god, shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done."
Ayat 36, raja itu akan berbuat sekehendak hati, ia akan meninggikan dan membesarkan dirinya terhadap setiap Allah, juga terhadap Allah yang mengatasi segala Allah. Ia akan mengucapkan kata-kata yang tak senonoh sama sekali, dan ia akan beruntung sampai akhir murka itu, sebab apa yang telah ditetapkan akan terjadi.
So let's capture a few words and see if this doesn't ring a bell elsewhere in the Bible.
Ya, dan coba kita lihat kata-kata kuncinya dan lihat apakah memang kita terngiang-ngiang. Oh, ada juga di bagian Alkitab lain.
So regardless of what happened with this king of the north in between,
jadi terlepas daripada apa yang terjadi di antara raja utara dan selatan ini,
in 36, this king of the north says it exalts himself, it magnifies himself.
Dikatakan bahwa ia meninggikan diri, ia membesarkan diri.
It speaks marvelous things against the God of gods.
Ya, mengucapkan kata-kata yang tak senonoh terhadap Allah,
and it says, "You shall prosper."
dan juga dikatakan akan beruntung.
Now, if you look carefully, all the similar expressions are found in other verses.
Dan kita bisa lihat bahwa terminologi ekspresi yang sama juga ada di dalam ayat-ayat yang lain.
And who are these verses referring to?
Dan siapakah yang dirujuk oleh ayat-ayat ini?
Sorry? The papacy, right?
Ya, kepausan ya.
Okay, so the king of the north somehow must have transitioned from being the king of the north in Greece, then to Rome, then to papal Rome in verse 36.
Jadi ya Raja Utara harusnya ya mulai bertransisi dari Raja Utara ke Roma, lalu kemudian ke kepausan.
Right, and that should not be a surprise because
Ya itu harusnya tidak mengejutkan karena
verse 37
ayat 37
says, "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, not the desire of women, nor regard any God, for he shall magnify himself above all."
Juga para Allah nenek moyangnya tidak akan diindahkannya, baik pujaan orang-orang perempuan maupun Allah manapun juga tidak akan diindahkannya, sebab terhadap semuanya itu ia akan membesarkan diri.
Alright, so and it's interesting because the king of the north, the papacy, they have this system where the men, the priests, they are not allowed to get married.
Dan yang menarik adalah bahwa kerajaan utara ini punya satu sistem di mana para imam-imamnya, pria-prianya itu tidak boleh menikah.
Okay, so what about the king of the south?
Bagaimana dengan raja negeri selatan?
Because it's interesting because geographically the king of the north was in the region of Babylon.
Yang menarik adalah bahwa secara geografis Raja Utara itu ada di daerah wilayah Babylon dulunya,
The king of the south was in the region of Egypt.
dan Raja Selatan itu ada di bagian Mesir.
And in Daniel chapter 11 verse 14,
Dan di dalam Daniel pasal 11 ayat yang ke-40,
it says, "And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him," meaning the king of the south, whoever that is, he will push against the papacy.
jadi dikatakan bahwa tetapi pada akhir zaman Raja Negeri Selatan akan berperang dengan dia. Raja Selatan akan melawan Raja Utara yang adalah kepausan.
So we need to ask two things here.
Jadi kita harus perhatikan dua hal di sini.
Well, maybe three. Who is this king of the south?
Ya, bahkan tiga. Siapa Raja Selatan ini?
Because whoever the king of the south is,
Jadi siapapun Raja Selatan ini,
he comes into the scene at the time of the end.
dia datang ke permukaannya ketika di zaman akhir,
And he pushes. Actually, it's the word to gore, like what is done, what the horns of a bull do.
ya maksudnya melawan ini ya seperti mungkin ya seperti menanduk lah gitu ya,
So to make-
menusuk,
Yeah,
seperti tandukan banteng.
Yeah, to make an attack against the king of the north.
Ya untuk menyerang Raja Utara.
So the question is,
Jadi pertanyaannya adalah
which power made an attack against the papacy that gave him a wound?
jadi kekuasaan manakah yang menyerang kepausan dan melukainya
At the time of the end.
di zaman akhir?
No? Not yet. Not yet. Okay? Because actually, let's see. So, have you ever heard about the papacy receiving a deadly wound in Revelation chapter 13?
Jadi pernah kita mendengar bahwa kepausan menerima luka yang mematikan di Wahyu 13?
Okay, the French Revolution, okay?
Yaitu di Revolusi Prancis.
Alright? Because actually the time of the end began after the persecution of the Middle Ages.
Jadi waktu di akhir zaman itu dimulai setelah penganiayaan di abad pertengahan.
And what's interesting is that it was after this year that the events that Jesus foretold in Matthew 24 started to happen.
Dan ya sebenarnya setelah tahun-tahun ini adalah bahwa kejadian yang Yesus sudah sampaikan, sudah ramalkan di Matius 24 mulai terjadi.
Okay, so the power that came into this time that gave a wound to the papacy was none other than France with the French Revolution.
Jadi kekuasaan yang melukai kepausan ini ya bukan tidak lain adalah kekaisaran Prancis.
Right? So what is interesting is that in Revelation chapter 11 verse 8,
Yang menarik adalah di dalam Wahyu 11 ayat 8,
it speaks about this same power that would rise from the abyss,
menceritakan tentang kuasa yang muncul dari jurang
that is called spiritual Sodom and Egypt.
yang disebutkan sebagai Sodom dan Mesir rohani.
So what is the spirit of Sodom?
Jadi apakah roh daripada Sodom ini?
It's actually sexual immorality that was promoted in France at the time of the French Revolution.
Yaitu adalah ya kemesuman seksual ya yang dipromosikan pada waktu revolusi Prancis.
And what is the spirit of Egypt?
Dan apakah roh daripada Mesir?
It's the attitude that Pharaoh showed when he said, "Who is God that I should obey him?"
Ya, ini adalah sikap yang ditunjukkan oleh Firaun ketika dia berkata, siapakah Allah sehingga aku harus
So
menaatinya.
actually, this fit like a glove in France. Yeah.
Jadi memang ini pas banget untuk disematkan ke Prancis.
Now, what is amazing is that out of the French Revolution came things that sometimes we don't know that came out of it.
Jadi yang menarik adalah bahwa dari revolusi Prancis ini muncul hal-hal yang kita tidak sambungkan awal mulanya ke revolusi Prancis.
So in the time of the French Revolution, there came different philosophers and different thinkers.
Jadi di dalam masa revolusi Prancis itu muncullah filsuf-filsuf dan pemikir-pemikir yang berbeda-beda.
With the goal of eliminating religion, especially Christianity, from the society.
Dengan tujuan utama yaitu melenyapkan kekristenan, keagamaan, khususnya kekristenan dari masyarakat.
And I mean, we can understand in a way because people were being oppressed by the clergy, by the Roman Catholic Church.
Jadi kita bisa pahami ya, karena memang orang-orang itu sementara ditekan oleh ya kepausan dengan keimaman kepastorannya mereka.
So the French Revolution was an overreaction to the oppression of the papacy.
Jadi sebenarnya revolusi Prancis ini adalah tanggapan dari kepausan.
So there were different philosophers, as I said, that came from this time.
Jadi ada beberapa filsuf-filsuf berbeda yang muncul di waktu ini.
One was called Jean Lamarck actually.
Jadi salah satunya adalah Jean Lamarck ini,
Which was actually the first one to believe or to try to show in laboratory that small species would transform themselves and evolve.
yang sebenarnya adalah yang pertama menunjukkan ya di lab bahwa spesies-spesies kecil itulah yang akan mentransformasikan dirinya dari binatang yang kecil ke binatang yang lebih besar.
And later on there was a name by the name of Charles Darwin
Dan kemudian ada yang bernama Charles Darwin
that took his words
yang mengambil karyanya
and developed them and created the origin of species, the theory of evolution.
dan dikembangkan lebih lanjut lagi lalu menulis buku yang Origin of Species yang adalah teori evolusi.
Yeah, do you have those issues here in Indonesia? Do you speak about the theory of evolution and these things?
Not exactly.
Not exactly. All right, so I'll probably just make a link and then skip all over this thing.
Jadi karena kita nggak hebohkan ini ya mungkin saya akan kasih sambungannya sedikit dan kita akan lengkapi. Komunisme
Has its roots in Darwinism.
punya akarnya di dalam paham Darwinisme.
If there was no theory of evolution,
Kalau tidak ada teori evolusi,
there will be no communism.
tidak akan ada komunisme.
If there will be no French Revolution, there will be no communism today.
Kalau tidak ada revolusi Prancis, maka tidak akan ada komunisme ya seperti sekarang ini.
There's another man by the name of Voltaire,
Jadi ada orang lagi namanya adalah Voltaire,
who was the first one to create the theater.
adalah yang pertama yang menciptakan teater.
Okay? And the theater was basically a place where people would have plays, but usually the theme was to make a mockery of Christianity.
Dan teater ini adalah di mana mereka akan ada ya drama-drama, tapi biasanya temanya adalah mereka akan mengolok-olok kekristenan.
There would be no Hollywood today
Tidak akan ada Hollywood kalau
if there was no Voltaire in the past,
kalau tidak ada ya si Voltaire ini ya di masa lalu.
if there was no French Revolution,
Kalau tidak ada revolusi Prancis.
right? So I mean, there are so many things in society today that find their roots in the French Revolution.
Jadi intinya adalah bahwa begitu banyak hal-hal di masyarakat sekarang yang mendapati merunutkan akarnya di revolusi Prancis.
Right, but it says that the king of the north shall come against him, against this power, like a whirlwind, chariots and horsemen, and with many ships, and he shall enter the countries and shall overflow and pass over.
Jadi dikatakan, dan raja negeri utara itu akan menyerbunya dengan kereta dan orang-orang berkuda dan dengan banyak kapal, dan ia akan memasuki negeri-negeri dan menggenangi dan meliputi semuanya seperti air bah.
So in other words, the papacy would make a comeback, would strike back again.
Jadi dengan kata lain bahwa kepausan ini akan melakukan serangan balik.
How will he do it? He will do with chariots, the horsemen, and with ships.
Jadi bagaimana cara dia melakukannya adalah dengan kereta kuda dan dengan orang-orang berkuda, yaitu adalah kekuatan militer.
That represent military power and economic power. Yeah?
Dan dengan kapal-kapal yang melambangkan kekuasaan ekonomi.
Right. So, so where are we today?
Jadi di manakah kita sekarang ini?
Now, I don't know how the situation is because I know I see the situation in the West.
Jadi saya tidak tahu situasi seperti apa, tapi karena yang saya tahu adalah yang di barat sana.
But usually people say that what happens in America sooner or later will happen in the rest of the world.
Ya, mereka katakan apa yang terjadi di Amerika ya cepat lambat akan juga menjalar ke sisa daripada belahan bumi lainnya.
Do you see it here?
Trickling.
McDonald's here,
Ya,
Burger King.
ya ada ya restoran-restoran cepat saji ini, McDonald, Burger King.
Alright? I mean, the thing is that the things that are happening in America today, there is this big battle between two ideologies.
Jadi apa yang terjadi di Amerika sekarang ini adalah ada suatu pertempuran besar di antara dua ideologi.
Okay, so on one side you have the nationalist Christian nationalists who want to push religion into the government.
Jadi di satu sisi ada nasionalis religius yang mau mendorong kekristenan ke dalam pemerintahan.
And on the other side you have the ones who just want to make everything open, the LGBT and so forth and so on for everyone.
Dan sisi lainnya adalah semua yang mau bikin saja semua terbuka, LGBT, yang mungkin yang liberal inilah.
Which are philosophies from the king of the south.
Yang sebenarnya adalah bagian daripada filosofi yang muncul dari kerajaan selatan ini.
That came from the French Revolution.
Yang muncul dari revolusi Prancis.
Now, what this tells us is that eventually the king of the north will prevail.
Dan apa yang kita katakan sekarang adalah bahwa pada waktunya nanti bahwa kerajaan utara ini akan menang.
But our time is up.
Tetapi waktu kita sudah habis.
So we have to close.
Maka kita harus
Tomorrow, next episode.
Dan besok episode selanjutnya.
Any questions just before we wrap up? So at least.
So, jadi komunis itu bukan dari Soviet atau China.
So communism is not from Soviet or China. Does not originated from Soviet or China.
No, it doesn't come from there. So communism comes from the book of a man called Karl Marx.
German.
French?
Is it German?
German. Okay. Who wrote the Communist Manifesto?
Yeah.
Okay. And the Communist Manifesto is based on the theory of evolution, meaning the strongest prevails over the weaker.
Jadi Karl Marx ini adalah bapak komunisme yang menulis suatu Communist Manifesto yang ideologinya adalah bahwa yang kuat akan mengalahkan yang lemah. Ya itulah evolusi kan. Siapa kuat dia menang gitu.
Di jungle itu.
Law of the jungle.
Autornya dari Jerman, tapi yang ngambil ideologinya di Prancis. Jerman nggak ngambil mana?
Enggak, maksudnya yang dia bilang adalah it based on French ideology and then developed by the Germans and adapted by the Soviet and the Chinese.
Berarti revolusi Prancis pada saat itu tidak mempromosikan.
So the French Revolution did not actually promote communism yet.
No, but it created the basic ideology that was then transformed.
Jadi itu benihnya, tapi bentuknya namanya kemudian adalah komunisme.
Yeah, so there was the seed, and then the form comes to be communism in other parts of the world.
Exactly. Lalu ideologi ini bergerak, diambil oleh Rusia, China gitu.
Yeah.
Dan inilah yang diperangi oleh si Amerika dan sekutu gitu.
Yeah. So are we saying that communism is the king of the south? And capitalism is the king of the north?
I mean, somehow the ideology, yes. So the ideology of one side, false religion, like Christianity to be imposed, the false Christianity to be imposed in society. Babylon. The other side, you have Egypt. So atheism.
But how do you reconcile liberalism with communism? Because liberalism is a far different than communism, but both falls under the kingdom of the south.
Yeah, I mean, so liberalism, it depends because one can consider liberalism from an economic standpoint. One can consider liberalism from like a moral kind of moral values, right?
Right.
And in that case, communism is very liberal in that.
Yeah, actually, that's true. The liberals are pretty communist in a sense that they want to have strong government and control and everything. So it kind of falls into communism in that case.
Gua agak bingung sih mas.
Oke. Gimana?
Kan Raja Utara PPC.
So the king of the north is papacy.
Raja Selatan komunisme.
The king of the south communism? Not necessarily. I think
this ideology against
ideology, right?
Yeah, that.
Ini mau mempopulerkan LGBT.
So this wants to
also.
Yeah.
Terus ini nanti kalah, maksudnya dia ngikut ke LGBT, dia mau adopt gitu si.
So is the king of the north or the PPC wants to adopt the LGBT ideology, or they're pushing back?
I mean, in public, eventually it will be pushed down.
Okay. Jadi secara publik yang secara umum dinyatakan ya akan dilawan.
Because right now what's happening, and especially in America, this LGBT and not only that, is being promoted so far that people are saying we need to bring our country back to God.
Ya, jadi di Amerika ya sepertinya kan ya supaya melawan liberalisme LGBT, artinya kita harus kembali kepada Tuhan. Jadi memang ini dua kekuasaan yang sedang gontok-gontokan gitu loh.
And actually it's such a strong battle now that there is even now created what they call Agenda 2025 for the next presidential election.
Agenda 20?
It's called Agenda 2025.
Okay,
which is basically it's a 900 page you can see on the internet with like a mandate for the next conservative party in the US.
Jadi bahkan pergolakan ini begitu kuat sampai ada yang namanya Agenda 2025. Jadi supaya kalau nanti yang menangnya yang konservatif, yang kerajaan utara ini, mereka akan melakukan mandat supaya ya kembalikanlah kekonservatifan, kekristenan apa gitu.
Okay. And basically what they are saying, I mean, say many things, but one thing is that they want to eliminate this LGBT issue, and they want to bring God back into the government.
Jadi mau membawa kembali mengembalikan Allah ke pemerintahan, karena kan sebelumnya enggak gitu loh, karena semuanya ditentang.
And they want to bring Sabbath as day of rest.
Dan mau menetapkan ya Sabat sebagai hari perhentian yang sebenarnya ujungnya adalah Sunday law gitu.
When they say Sabbath, they mean Sunday.
Ya.
There's Sabbath.
Ya, artinya penerjemahan ini agak sedikit berbeda dengan buatan teman-teman di sini kan. Teman-teman di sini malah dua LGBT nih, ini nih agendanya nih. Padahal juga sebenarnya pergerakannya bukan LGBT, ini malah ini mau jadi kendaraan juga untuk.
I think the confusion is that when we say king of the north and king of the south, we thought that one is the good force, but neither of them are the good forces. So, because usually when there's something, it's the force of good, God against others, the Israelites against the Philistines, the Israelites against Egypt. But in this case, it's both are bad, but it's just happening. Okay.
Iya, dua-duanya buruk. Maksudnya kan kalau terjemahan teman-teman di sini, LGBT nih, padahal ini sebenarnya ini juga bakal dilahap sama
bakal dikalahin gitu.
Iya kan? Maksudnya LGBT ini pun juga memang mau dimakan sama
dimakan tuh maksudnya dikalahkan atau diadopt atau diambil?
Nah, gue nggak tahu, makanya mau dikalahkan atau mau diadopt.
So the question is, in our interpretation, at least in this part of the world, is in Indonesia, is that all this LGBT movement is going to be swallowed, either adopted or being pushed by the king of the north. Is that what's going to happen?
The understanding of the Indonesian people that the LGBT part of the north.
Part of the king of the north. Okay, so
the LGBT.
Right. I mean, I would put them more in the class of the king of the south because it's more like from this part of attitude against God and against Christianity. But of course, we need to remember that Babylon, they were enemies of God. Egypt, they were enemies of God.
No, I think the understanding is because the big bad thing is the king of the north. So whatever bad, we ascribe it to the king of the north. as well as the LGBT, which actually part of the South. But since it's bad, it must be from the North. So whatever bad is from the North.
Yeah, they always think like that. We
Jadi-
understand.
No, but both are bad.
But because both are bad, so it doesn't really matter, yeah.
Because in Indonesia, because we are Muslim country, they are really fighting about the
Yes,
LGBT
they are.
agenda, right?
And I
Yeah.
think I heard I get the friends from Dutch land that their government start putting the government back to the religion too,
Okay.
not only the American, because
Yeah.
they're talking about to stop the LGBT little by little.
Right, right,
That's my friend said.
Right.
And
right,
they're not give the freedom anymore, just like
right, right.
the Dutchman did like that.
Yeah. But this should have our ears open, because the problem is that people want to counteract this movement, this
Yeah.
gay movement
Yeah.
and these things. But the problem is that they want to go to the other extreme. They
Yeah,
want to say,
yeah.
we need religion and we need to enforce it.
Yeah.
But we cannot enforce anything, right? So that is the issue, because if we read into great controversy, eventually it's the United States, they are so low that they say we need to bring country back to God.
Ya, karena pelajar nubuatan di sini kan selalu mengaitkan, udah dua lembaga nih. Katanya kan.
Tapi-
Jadi kita kan jadi bingung, ini sebenarnya gimana sih urusannya gitu kan? Ternyata sebenarnya polanya juga udah
Yeah.
juga gitu.
No, because in Indonesia we talk about the two institutions from heaven, right? Marriage and the Sabbath, and it's gonna be done by the big bad one entity. But now you're kind of separating. Okay, the Sabbath part is the North,
The North.
and then the
South is
marriage,
the
the LGBT is kind of like the. So it's kind of. So that's why